Alright, welcome to section 5. We're going to be looking at the uh, PHP data object, PDO. Alright, let's start with the overview. And I think this is where we stopped on our last lecture, right? So I still have this here. In this lecture, we're going to be looking at the overview of PDO, right? And I need to explain a whole lot to you, right? And I cannot be doing it and typing at the same time. That's gonna take a whole lot of time. So I went ahead and typed something down, but I promise you we're gonna look at this one after the other, right? So let's go to where we stopped. Let's go to Google and let's type in PDO. PDO. Let's just type in PDO. All right, and I want you to click on the PDO manual from PHP. Great. So PDO is uh, an abstraction layer, all right, for databases. All right, we have the DBA, we have the DBX, we have the ODBC, and we have PDO. All right. Now PDO itself is a class. All right, we just finished talking about object-oriented programming. All right, that was in a couple of lectures ago. All right, now PDO is a class, and we can see it here. PDO is a class, so it's a class that has methods in them. See that? PDO is a class that has methods in them. What it's used for is primarily to create connections, all right, to database. All right. Now we also have the PDO statement class. We're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about the PDO exception class. All right, we've already talked about exception in our OOP. Right, now I want us to click on PDO, right, because this is what we're looking at, PDO. So we understand that PDO is a database abstraction layer, and also it is a class. All right, so we just go and put that down because we need to put everything down. And all classes, right, need to be instantiated before they can be used, right? So now I want us to look at PDO uh, the PDO public construct, this first method inside PDO. All right, now when you instantiate PDO, all right, you're gonna, I hope you can see, let me zoom in a bit. Great. If you instantiate PDO, you're gonna need to pass in some parameters, right? So basically PDO is a class that takes in some parameters, right? And the first method, all right, the first instantiation method has to be a public construct, all right, and it takes in a string, all right, which is called DSN. We're gonna look at this. It takes in a username, it takes in a password, it takes in a variable which is an array. All right, so this variable is a string, this variable is a string, and this variable is a string, but this one, the option, is an array. All right, now we can put all together, right, what we are learning from the website. We can put all together here and say, all right, PDO is a class that takes in some parameters, right? It requires you to specify the type of data. This is the first parameter. It requires you to specify the type of database, example SQL or the Postgres database. All right, and also it requires your connection details. All right, I'm talking about the host name and the port number, all right, and the database name. you can see we had we had I mean a file here, database file for the manual way procedure, right? For the procedural databases connection, we were taking in server name, username, password, and everything. The same thing applies to PIDO, right? So the PIDO needs to be instantiated, right, in a form of a public construct method. All right, if you are creating a class or a file, just like we did here, if we are creating a class or a file to hold our database connection details, all right, then we need to put it in a public construct method. All right, so let's quickly look at an example of how you can instantiate PIDO. All right, example, this is example you will see. Let me see, let's go back online and see if we can see an example down here. All right, this is the no, these are from contributors. All right, what I will do, let me just click on the public construct. So we are looking at the PIDO, all right, public construct, all right, the first method. All right, and now if you look at this example, all right, the DSN, all right, which stands for the data source name, all right, is taking in the type of the SQL over here, the database name, all right, and then the host. Now in PIDO you're going to see mostly IP addresses replacing host names, all right. So instead of local host, you will see an IP address, and if it's a remote host, you will see the remote IP. All right. So basically, the first parameter that it requires here, right, the DSN, right, is which stands for data source name. You can see it here. Is basically the type of the SQL which needs to be specified, the type of the database which needs to be specified first. All right, followed by the name of the database, all right, and then the host or the ports that the database reside on. Then the user, all right, is your username and your password. All right, you remember we did something like this in our procedure. All right, now let's come back to over here. All right, so we are seeing that this is how to instantiate PIDO. All right, now this is what is called the I will call it, let me just call it connection uh, handler. Right, now this is basically your object. This is the object that has been instantiated from the PIDO class. All right, so this object handles the connection of what, of your database. All right, now the reason why this is in a public construct is, let's go back to let's go down to what we were doing on our previous SQL lecture. You see what happened here, I included a database, all right, file that we had. Why? Because we need to pass in a query to the database. All right, now this database file has information about a database, and it opens the connection automatically, right? Because we gotta try here, try and connect. So this is always open. That is why we are ending the connection. I don't think you don't have this though, but it's, I ended my connection after the while loop, right? So this means the connection should close. Now if I go down here and write a query, it's not going to execute. I think we saw that in one of our lectures, right? So this means that the connection needs to be executed automatically. All right, that is why the first method is a public construct. And you know what public constructor, when you write your a public construct function, then you're telling your that method, or anytime you just instantiate your object, it executes automatically. All right, so this is the typical, or the process of instantiating a PIDO class. All right, and we can see that the DSN here, all right, is a string, all right, and it takes in the type of database, all right, then the name of the host or the port, and then the name of the database, all right. Now we know what username takes, we know what password takes. Let's look at the option, all right. Where option, all right, is an array variable, all right. We saw it on this on the manual. See, array, all right. So your option has to be an array variable, all right. And basically it keeps attribute sets, all right, set attributes or properties of the connection, all right. It keeps the properties of the connection, all right, such as it tells the connection how you want the connection to be. You want it to be a persistent connection, you want it to be a slack connection, all right. Usually you're going to say I want it to be a persistent connection, all right. So you're going to set persistent to true, all right. We're going to look at an example very soon, all right. And also how you want the connection to be handled in case there's an error. So usually we're going to be using the error, the exception, all right. Now let me show you this is the set attributes I'm talking about, all right. If you click here, you will see a list of the options that you can pass in as an array, all right. Now this is one of them, the PDO error mode, all right. So this is the error mode attribute, all right, which takes in a PDO error mode exception, all right. So which means we can assign this, all right, to this, all right, as an array in there. So let's look at an example of how we can use it. If you look at this, I've got an example of an array. So I said options or option equals array. It should be options, right, because the variable is s, has an s, I should say. So we say option array, and you know how to create an array at this point. And we set the first option, right, to PDO attribute persistent to true, all right. So that is how we want the connection to be established, all right. And then we go the PDO attribute error, all right, and then we assign it to the PDO attribute the PDO error mode exception. So this tells the connection that, listen, this is how I want you to be handled. I want you to first be a persistent connection, and if there is an error, pass it to the exception, all right. And we're going to look at the PDO exception class also. So let's bring all together. We are learning that PDO is a class that needs to be instantiated before it can be used, all right. And PDO takes in 4 parameters, all right. The DSN, all right, the DSN, which is the data source name, should contain the name of the data, the type of the database first, and then the name, and then the host or the port number, right. And also it has to be in a public construct, right. So basically it's going to be something like this. The first thing you do, right, after you have declared your variables to hold all this information, all right, the next thing you do is you say connect, you declare your database handler object. In most cases you will see it as DBH, all right. That stands for database handler. So this is the object that is holding your connection details, all right, from the newly instantiated database PDO class, all right. So the PDO class itself, let's go back to our PDO class itself. Let's go back once, I guess. No, this is a construct. Yeah. So the PDO class, all right, you can see from here, the PDO class itself has a lot of methods in them, all right. It's got the prepare method, it's got a query, it's got a last inserted ID. What we're going to do in the next lecture, this lecture is getting long, we're going to look at the important methods that we can use, all right, inside this PDO class to work with our databases, all right. So I'll see you in the next lecture. I hope this was clear. If it's not, rewind the video and listen to it again. It's a pretty straightforward concept.